So you're looking for a meal that's low effort, inexpensive, but still looks good enough to impress those in-laws that just can't seem to understand what she sees in you. Then look no further than the overly forgiving and very delicious Osso Buco. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode here at Time Out Kitchen. Today I'll be showing you the humble, very tasty, and always impressive Osso Buco. Now, while I may not be pronouncing the name correctly, this dish traditionally features a crosscut of veal shanks with some veg in a wine broth, but I'll be putting my own twist that would make any Irishman proud. And as always, I'll be telling you exactly how long this meal takes to put together and exactly how much it'll set you back. So with that, let's get to the ingredients. And naturally, the best place to start is with our beef shanks. And notice I say beef shanks and not veal shanks because this is in fact from an older cow. You can see a decent layer of marbling as well as a very large bone. And this bone is a feature because we're going to get some very delicious bone marrow out of there, but depending on what the butcher has, you may get a larger or smaller bone, or you may want more meat. Another thing I would recommend is to use some butcher's twine to tie this up. Now, I don't have any, so I'm going to leave these as they are, but if you want to keep the shape, definitely grab yourself some twine. Next, you want to grab yourself 2 large carrots, which we will be dicing into small cubes. Next, you want to grab yourself an equal amount of celery, which we will also be dicing into fine little cubes. Then you'll want to grab yourself 1 large white onion, which, as you might have guessed, you'll also be dicing into small little cubes. You'll then want to grab yourself 5 or 6 cloves of garlic, which will be running through our garlic press. Then to add some color and some depth of flavor, you're going to want to grab yourself about 2 or 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. For braising liquids, you'll want about 2 cups of beef stock. Now again, depending how deep or how shallow your pan is and how much meat you have, you may need a little bit less or a little bit more, but you want just enough to cover the meat. Remember how I said I would make those Irishmen proud? Well, the next thing you're going to want to grab is some Guinness. Now again, you could use red wine or white wine or really whatever you want, but dark beer for me is such a great addition to meat that's being braised, and I just really love the flavor that this brings. But if Guinness isn't your thing, go ahead and grab your favorite stout or dark beer of your choosing. For a nice herbaceous note, go ahead and grab yourself 1 large stalk of fresh rosemary as well as a couple of sprigs of fresh thyme. These will get thrown in directly into the pot as the cooking process goes, and they will break down and add a nice flavor. Finally, what I understand to be a relatively traditional component to this is going to be some flour, which we're going to use to lightly dust our meat. This is to help with the sear and hopefully to also thicken our sauce. And there you go, that's going to cover all of the base ingredients for this Osso Buco. And don't worry, it's not going to be this plain. We're also going to make a delicious side of mashed potatoes, as well as a very traditional and very delicious gremolata. Oh, and speaking of things that are traditional and delicious, B-roll. Alright, with that beautiful B-roll out of the way, go ahead and grab your beef shanks because it's time to get these ready for a sear. So naturally, we're going to want to coat this thoroughly with some kosher salt. And again, guys, be generous here because these are very large chunks of meat and they're going to be cooking for a long time. You'll also want to hit that with some freshly ground pepper, again, being quite generous, before covering with our flour. Now again, guys, you can see I'm going with a fairly light dusting. The idea here is just to get all of the sides covered to help with the sear. Once that's done, just go ahead and flip these over and repeat the process on the other side. Again, I recommend being fairly generous here with your seasoning, and if you want to add some extra things, that's okay, but we're keeping it really simple with some salt, some pepper, and some flour. With that done, go ahead and pat these down and roll the outsides in the flour just to make sure you get every inch covered. You should have something that looks a little bit like this. Now that's done, just go ahead and move these to the side because we have a few vegetables to prepare. So go ahead and grab your peeler and your carrot and get peeling. Now, if you're really lazy, I suppose you wouldn't have to peel these, although I would recommend washing your carrots, but I just think it looks a little bit better. With that done, it is time to cut these carrots down to size. Now, there is no perfect way to cut these, but I do recommend you try to get these into roughly the same size or as close as you can to that sizing, because it's going to keep everything even and help with the cooking process. So you can see I'm cutting this into long slices, then making it into matchsticks before cutting it into cubes that look something like this. Once you're done chopping up all of your carrots, you're going to go ahead, grab your celery, and repeat the same process. Now again, don't worry too much about the size of your cuts here, just try to keep these as even with your carrots as possible. And I think here we've done a fairly good job. You can see the sizing is about the same as our carrots. You're then going to grab your onion, and yes, believe it or not, you will be doing the exact same thing. So after a couple vertical slices, some horizontal slices, and then a few more vertical slices, you should have onion that looks a little bit like this. And that's pretty much it. You're basically done. You can see we have a nice plate full of our vegetables, has a beautiful color, and everything is roughly the same size. So with all our veggies neatly chopped, it is time to move to the stove where we're going to have a pan on medium-high heat. In that pan, you're going to add about 2 tablespoons of a neutral oil before gently dropping in your meat. So let that sizzle away for about 4 or 5 minutes until you have a nice golden brown color like so. Try to get as much browning as you can given the pan and the meat that you have. After this sears for another 3 or 4 minutes on its other side, it is time to remove your meat from the pan. Don't forget, we're not trying to fully cook this here, we're just trying to give this a quick bit of color. Once you've removed all of the meat from your pan, it is time to now add your veggies back in. With your veggies added, go ahead and give this a quick stir, making sure that you try to scrape off any of the stuff on the bottom, because that's going to add an extra bit of flavor, as well as the flavor from your salt and your pepper. Then give it another stir until this is translucent, and then it's time to add your garlic. So go ahead and run all of that garlic through your garlic press, and then give this a quick stir. Once this is beautifully fragrant and everything is looking nice and translucent, it is time to add your tomato paste. Now I recommend that you clear a space for your 2 or 3 tablespoons of tomato paste before letting this cook off a little bit and then incorporating it into the rest of your vegetables. With your tomato paste somewhat incorporated, it is time to grab your beef stock. And no, we're not adding all 2 cups here, we're just going to add a quick splash to help deglaze the bottom of our pan. So add in about 1/4 cup and then give this a quick stir, making sure to scrape off anything from the bottom. Once that's done, go ahead and add the rest of the beef stock. Bring this up to a simmer before adding in your beef shank. Now you may need to make a little bit of room here, so don't be afraid to kind of wiggle this around so it settles on the bottom. Once all of your meat is in the pot, go ahead and grab a spoon and just ladle on a little bit of those juices to the top, because again, this is going to be braising for a while. Oh, and don't forget to add in your pint of Guinness, because this is going to add a tremendous depth of flavor as well as color. Bring that up to a simmer, and you should have some very, very tantalizing meat that just needs to cook for about 2.5 hours. So then it's time to partially cover this and let this do its thing. Now, as is tradition, we forgot something, so for your benefit, don't forget to put in your fresh herbs before leaving this on the stove for the next 2.5 hours. So while our meat is braising, we're going to go ahead and prepare our side. Now, traditionally, you might serve this with polenta or some risotto, but I'm going to go with the non-traditional mashed potatoes. Again, making the Irish very proud. So go ahead and grab yourself some spectacular spuds and begin to peel these down. Now, I know peeling potatoes can be a bit of a chore, but we've got lots of extra time on our hands and we may as well use it. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the peeling process. Your potato should look something like this, and when you're done, you should have, well, this many potatoes, which you're going to need to cut in half and then cut into small chunks. This is going to help speed up the cook time and also make sure that we have something that is a little bit more even. Once you've got all of your potatoes chopped up, you should have something like this. And all you're missing is a home to put them in, and that is going to be in this large pot. So go ahead and transfer your potatoes into said pot before filling with water, adding salt, and moving to the stove on a boil. Now, to kick this up a notch, we're going to make ourselves some roasted garlic. So cut the top off the head of this garlic, making sure to expose as many of the tops of those cloves of garlic as you can, before grabbing some tinfoil and putting about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil on top of this single head of garlic. Once that's done, you're going to go ahead and wrap up this foil, making kind of a little pouch like so. before placing this in a 400-degree oven for about 30 minutes. With that done, it is now time to get fancy because we're going to make a really easy and very delicious gremolata. And this zesty and delicious topping is made with only a few ingredients, including some fresh parsley, the zest from 1 lemon, and some grated garlic. So go ahead and give your parsley a quick chop, trying to get this down to a fairly fine consistency, so I'd say give it 1 or 2 extra passes. With that done, move it to the side and go ahead and zest your lemon. This is going to be excellent for cutting through all of that richness and adds a nice color as well. Combine these in a bowl, of course pouring as majestically as humanly possible, before grating your garlic directly into the mixture. Then add a bit of salt and pepper to taste, before finishing with a 1/4 cup to about 1/3 cup of olive oil. Give this a quick stir and you should have a very vibrant and very fragrant topping for your osso buco. Honestly, I'm surprised I don't make this more because it looks and smells amazing. With that done, go ahead and move this to the side because it is now time to grab your potatoes and give them a quick mashing. But of course, before we mash, we need to season these up with some salt, drop in a 1/4 cup or about 1/3 of a stick of butter, followed by about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Then grab your most pristine of mashers and, well, begin mashing. If you're looking for extra smooth potatoes, you can go ahead and pass this through a ricer first, or you could use a sieve depending what you have. Now, I don't have either, and I actually find this is a lot easier to do, and I actually find I also like the consistency of the potatoes. In any case, once your potatoes are thoroughly mashed, go ahead and give this a quick taste for seasoning. And yeah, these are good, but we gotta add one more thing, and that is our wonderfully roasted garlic. It has a mild sweetness and it's smooth like paste, so you can go ahead and just squeeze this right out of the parcel, mix it in, and well, there you go. Some garlic mashed potatoes ready to serve. And speaking of serving, it is time to move this to the side and grab our braised meat because it is now done. Deep, rich, dark, and delicious. You can really see that the braising has done its job. This is super tender. You have a beautiful sheen from all the fat and the beer and the oil mixing, and you have a nice pop of color from all of those vegetables. There's just one thing missing, and that is to plate up our final dish. So go ahead and grab your nearest plate, put down a healthy scoop of your garlic mashed potatoes, or maybe 2 scoops of your garlic mashed potatoes because you're hungry, and then go ahead and carefully transfer your meat to the plate. Now again, this is where some butcher's twine would have come very much in handy, but again, I didn't have any. Then we're going to add a little bit more of our veggies on top just for a bit of color and some more flavor, before topping it with our wonderful gremolata. Oh, and some fresh parsley just for kicks. And there you go, an osso buco to impress even the most stubborn of in-laws. And you can really see why. This has a beautiful color, amazing aroma, tremendous amounts of color, and it's super simple to prepare. Now, I hate to do this to you, but I'm going to go ahead and take my first bite, and yeah, that's tender, like pull apart tender. You're going to want to dig into this whole dish, and believe me, it is a lot of meat, but one thing you don't want to forget is that marrow. This spreads well on toast, but this is just so good on its own. If you're not a fan of bone marrow, well, I feel for you, maybe look away, but this is the best thing about this. It's just got that little nugget of marrow, and it is amazing. Now, a meal like this may seem like it's a lot of work and rather extravagant, and you're probably wondering, well, how much time does this actually take, and what is it going to cost me? And for those wondering, this meal took me exactly 3 hours to put together from start to finish, and it came out at a cost at about $2.25 per serving. Now, of course, what you see here is obviously much more than 1 serving, but basically about 1/3 of this to about half of this dish is 1 serving, so it was a very good value for the amount of time, effort, and energy that went into it. Overall, I highly recommend you give this meal a shot. It is an amazing dish to make for friends and family, and it is excellent during the cold winter months. And with that, we're done. Thanks so much for watching, guys, until the end, and as always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.